Hi and welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about something that changed my life, my athletic career basically, and that is becoming a hybrid athlete and doing hybrid training. Most people tend to go towards a specialized sport or fitness activity, and while that's great for some people, it has its drawbacks. The first disadvantage of a specialized sport is when you want to keep up with higher levels. It involves a lot of time, energy, money, so it gets hard really to keep up with it. So that may ultimately lead to burnout or mental blow if you're like, I like doing the sport, I'm good at it, but I can't quite keep up at this point, or I'm starting a family and I can't quite do this anymore at the level that I should be doing it. Ultimately, if you think about it, how many people when they're younger doing a sport and putting all their energy into one sport but completely abandoned it and don't do it anymore, and then they went from complete focus to this one thing to absolutely doing nothing? And how many youth athletes do you know that now they're in their 30s, 40s and they're completely unhealthy? They have a belly, they're too heavy, they're obese, or they have health issues. So think about how many people that went from the one extreme into the other. And that's what putting all your energy and time and focus and getting pressure from your peers or from your network, your community around you, often leads to. Another thing I see a lot with specialized sports is a chance of injury. It happened to me as well when I was younger and I was putting all my eggs in one basket. I was doing one thing. You keep repeating the same things, you focus on the same things, you're using the same muscles in the same way, and even though at high levels or proper athletes or people who think outside of the box, do cross training off season, even in season, and do a really good job, the majority of people just simply doesn't. And that's the problem. That's what leads to injuries, and ultimately it may cause you to have to give up your sport. Another disadvantage of specialized sports, one that I dealt with, that I had problems with, and a part of it might have just been lack of mental strength at that age. I find that once you reach a certain point in your life, you reach a certain age, you gain so much mental strength. You can prevail and you can deal with so much more versus when you're younger. So that's a whole different factor. But one thing I struggled with doing specialized sports was boredom. You always do the same thing. You have to spend so many hours doing this activity, go on the bike, go running, and unless you truly just love this one activity and you have that mental place, it becomes very hard for a lot of people. And finally, the last disadvantage with specialized training is probably the most important one, in my opinion, my perspective. It's the ability or lack of ability to adhere to a very strict training program. If you're going to specialize into one sport and you want to become good or better or reach higher levels, even if it's recreational, if you have that drive, it can become extremely hard to stick to a training program. You have parent-teacher conferences, kid gets sick, your dog gets an accident, you have a job, you have the household, you have so many things to do and so many variables that if you want to truly commit to a specialized sport, it takes so much. And there's very little, if you have a strict training program, there's very little flexibility unless you have a really great coach who you can communicate with and who can easily adapt the training program, but still it becomes very, very, very difficult. So for a long time we were told that if you want to be good at a certain sport, certain activity, or build a certain body, you have to focus solely on one activity, one sport. Now, not only does that put you in a box, but how many people do you know actually continue in one thing competitively? So why does it matter, right? If you think about health, longevity, and performance, it's going to be much better to do a lot of different things and become a more well-rounded athlete. So what is a hybrid athlete? A hybrid athlete is someone who is good at both strength training and endurance activities, and doesn't conform to the idea that you can only do one thing well at a time. Now, it is true, as a hybrid athlete, you won't reach your maximum ability in one of the categories, but who cares? Does it matter? Are you a competitive athlete in one thing? Yes, stick with it. Obviously, you're doing cross training. You should be doing cross training. But how many of us are truly high-level competitors in a certain discipline and stick with it? right? The vast minority. I like to truly appeal and focus on the general population. If you look around you, how many people truly need help? How many people fell off the boat? How many people lack motivation, discipline, and don't find any joy in working out anymore? Now that's what I'd like to focus on. So that's why I really want to push hybrid training, diversifying your workouts, becoming a more well-rounded athlete no matter what level you are at. Don't compare yourself to others. It's not because I work out an average of 8 hours a week that you need to do the same. You can work out, start with 2 hours or 3 hours a week. If you like to do a whole lot more, fine. If you like to do 60%, 80% endurance activities, supplement the rest with strength, fine. If you want to do 50-50, fine. Just the point is diversify your workouts and do more hybrid training. Once I started diversifying my workouts and do more hybrid training, a few things happened. I had a lot more fun. I was way more motivated, which ultimately led me to become more disciplined as well. And I could balance my workout load a lot better. If I do upper body strength training, I have no problem running the same day, the next day, or whatever. It's much easier to balance versus if you focus everything on one activity, recovery and intensity becomes a much harder formula. One thing I truly enjoy about being a hybrid athlete is I can fill in my schedule somewhat however I want, within reason. It's a lot more flexible. When I'm just maintaining, I basically kind of keep the same schedule, same workload, week to week. Then every once in a while I'll pick a goal. I'll pick a race, an event, not competitive anymore at this point, and that's a personal decision. It has nothing to do with being hybrid, anything. But it makes it a lot of fun. There's a lot of variety. There's a lot of flexibility, which keeps it a lot of fun. It's much easier to stay motivated and disciplined when you do that. If one day you wake up and this or that feels off, take a day off, or you switch out the training to something else. It is not as rigid. Most people have jobs and kids and a really big list of things to do, don't really need that extra rigid in their lives, because it takes away their spark, it takes away their motivation, which ultimately leads to a drop-off. Now as for myself, this time a few years after my half Ironman and a few more years after my marathon, I decided to sign up for a 50-mile, 80-kilometer ultra marathon in 3 months from now. So I'm really excited about it. It's something I would have never dreamed of doing years ago. But since running has become a solid part of my weekly training routine now for about a year, and I've truly felt a lot of progression in my running, I decided it was a really good goal. Scratch it off the list, and it's going to be a great accomplishment for myself personally. So I'm going to increase my mileage, my training runs from 2 to 3 to 4 a week, depending on the week. So I'm gonna switch it up, do some programming, some basic programming, but continue strength train. It's a solid part of my training routine. It keeps me injury free, it keeps me strong, and I'm simply not willing to sacrifice that. Now I used to hate running. In high school and college, it made me run certain events. Absolutely hated it. Then once I did actually build up pretty good endurance and power by cycling. Once I started training for my Olympic triathlons, that's when I started running a little bit more just for the event, like maybe 4 or 6 weeks before, maybe 8 weeks. And I would go up to 7 or 8 miles, and that's it, because it's basically a 10K at the end of a triathlon. Then once I started training for my marathon, never done more than 8 miles, and I gave myself 6 weeks to train for it. Finished in a decent time for a non-runner, and kind of dropped the boat again, didn't run anymore. But now I actually enjoy running. I enjoy going out in nature, especially even at night. Truly enjoy it. Now that I'm training for an ultra, I find a lot more pleasure in running. Now if you want to be a hybrid athlete, you have to build endurance somewhere. Could be running, could be something else. So it doesn't really matter. A lot of people will revert to running because it is quite straightforward. You don't need $10,000, 10,000 euros in gear and a fancy bike or whatnot. So a lot of times it will become part of the training. but it doesn't mean it has to be. You can be a perfectly well-rounded athlete without running. I was for years, even though I do feel like running has kind of made my training evolve and has made me a more complete hybrid athlete. Now this is important, and I can't accentuate this enough. In my opinion, there's no set parameters on what makes a hybrid athlete. There's no time or goal or certain set of programs that you need to accomplish in order to call yourself a hybrid athlete. Okay? You work strength, you work endurance, you work even mobility, you just really diversify. And if you become a more well-rounded athlete, call yourself a hybrid athlete. I think it has much more to do with progress and overall diversity as an athlete as it has to do with any specific high-level performance. Yes, if you want to be a high-level hybrid athlete, that's great. There are competitions out there, right? But again, do you. Don't compare yourself. Don't look at what other people are doing, because it's going to mess you up in most cases. If you're super competitive and it drives you, absolutely go for it. There's nothing wrong with it as long as you don't bring other people down, as long as it doesn't hurt you or anyone else. But for a lot of people, your progress and your enjoyment in the activity itself is going to be the primary thing to focus on. And that's why whenever I do races now, including the Ultra in a few months, it is not for anyone else. I'm not competing against anyone else. Hell, I have no ambition, and I wouldn't stand a chance with my body type in that field. But I do it purely for my own enjoyment, and it's what keeps me motivated, and it gives me a lot of joy. And that's what you need to figure out. How am I going to accomplish that? That's the goal. It's not a certain body, it's not a six-pack, but your ultimate goal should be, how do I find fulfillment in the activity and my lifestyle and the way I eat, the way I feel. That's the key. Part of my prep for this ultra marathon, about 3 months from now, is lowering body fat, right? Lowering weight, because I'm a pretty massive, well, I'm not an ultra runner yet, but I'm a pretty big person to be attempting something like this. So for years I was 11-12%, which is what I'm comfortable with. It doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter where anyone else is. You don't compare, you see where you are at, what you're comfortable with, how much something feels like a sacrifice, how much you're willing to sacrifice, and so on. Right now I'm about 16-17%. So I would like to get down back to a 10-11%, and that would bring me to about 220 pounds or just below, which would be a huge improvement for a long race like a 80K. You got to think about the impact on your joints. Your performance will go up, your muscles will last a whole lot longer. So therefore it's part of my goal to drop that weight. And it's just over 1 pound a week, which is perfect and very sustainable. By losing 1 pound a week, you don't really sacrifice your performance. You're not going to be miserable, depressed. You're not going to lack energy. So you're going to feel pretty good. You're going to be able to keep on building as you lose that weight gradually and slowly. Crash diets, never a good idea, especially if you want to improve performance or build a better body. The big challenge we're facing nowadays is not how do we shave off 0.2 of a second of this pro athlete on his 400-meter race. It is how do we get the general population to eat healthier, eat less processed food, move more, have less cancers, obesity, all that stuff. Because if you look at it statistically, how many people don't move and how many people eat horribly, right? So that is really what we need to be focusing on in the fitness industry. It is not like take this supplement and you'll get a 2% increase in this or that. It doesn't matter for the vast majority of us. What does matter is learning the basics, learning the basic principles of health and fitness. And that's what I want to share with you. Learning the basic principles of health and fitness, working out, eating, obviously everything, over a long period of time will make such a great difference in your life, in your mobility, your health, your performance, but also your happiness. There would be less depression in the world if more people knew the basic principles, knew simply the basics, nothing fancy. So my 2 cents is to figure out what you like to do and move. That is the most important thing. You will never stick with something you don't enjoy doing. So figure out something you enjoy doing and start, and then see what else you can do. Make it a part of your lifestyle, of your routine. Find joy in what you do and take it from there. Make sure there's an aerobic element to it, and definitely make sure there's a strength element to it in whatever form. That could be a Pilates, it could be resistance bands, it could be lifting weights, it could be suspension training, it could be a lot of different things. But try to mix those things together, and I guarantee you within a few months, without anything extreme, you'll see the benefits. We all know strength training is extremely important for your health, for your body, and has tons of benefits, right? But only 3%, I believe, of the US actually does any form of strength training. Less than 5% is an active gym membership user. So more people have gym memberships, but less than 5% actually uses them. So it's a big problem. So strength training is extremely important, yet a lot of endurance athletes are really petrified of adding mass. So it doesn't work like that. Strength training will benefit you greatly. It will benefit endurance athletes greatly. We're not talking about bodybuilding. Strength training, bodybuilding, two complete different things. Strength training will improve your endurance abilities, just as your endurance abilities and endurance training will benefit your strength training, because when you do endurance sports and activities, you actually improve the recovery time in between your sets, which enables you to lift harder and faster and with less recovery time and get better workouts. Cardio and endurance activities has gotten a really bad reputation over the years because of the so-called cardio junkies. All they do is spend time on the elliptical or the treadmill or the bike, and you know, it really, the wrong part of that is really truly their nutrition and their one-sided training, obviously. There's a lot to say about that, but either way, it's gotten a bad reputation, unnecessarily so. People like extremes, they're drawn to extremes. I've always been a supporter of balance in many parts of my life, and fitness, nutrition, in those fields, in those aspects, it's even so much more important to find balance. Do strength training, do endurance training, do both, do mobility, stretching, and so on. Now, some people will say, well, I already don't have time for this or that. How am I going to make time for that? You don't have to spend 6, 8, 10, 12 hours on it. If you do 1 or 2 endurance activities and then a few strength training activities, or you mix them together, you will greatly benefit from it. If you only have 3 hours a week, which I would recommend, I always tell people, try to work out at least 3 hours a week. Do 1 endurance, do 1 strength, and then do a mix. Do a high intensity resistance training, do a high intensity interval training. So a short run today, but I want to make a quick pit stop because this is where our new house gets built. And I'm standing in what might be, don't tell my wife, what might be the most important room, which is the home gym. This is going to be the size of like a double garage, about 350, 380 square feet, something like that, and not crazy huge, but definitely big enough. And it's going to have a variety of things, which I'll share in another video. You truly don't need all that much for a home gym or for a full training routine or regimen. For a full body workout, to be a hybrid athlete, you really don't need that much. You just need to know how to use it, right? Everyone's always wanting more, and companies always want to sell you more, but you truly don't need that much. You just need to learn how to use it properly. So it's going to be a lot of free weights, suspension trainer, minimal cardio equipment for myself, just a bike, and then we're going to have a little outdoor area where we can work out outside, do some yoga if it's nice. You can hear the birds. We're in a pretty nice nature area, and then there'll also be an outdoor shower, which would be awesome after the workout to jump in an outdoor shower or simply jump in the pool. So I'm really excited to share all this with you as well, as I'm just kind of like, you know, juggling everything, getting ready for races, do my hybrid training routines, work on the businesses, build the house, take care of the family, obviously first, and so on. So it's super exciting, and I can't wait to really show it to you and kind of share some tips about how I set up the home gym. And then eventually, once I have the home gym, I can actually share more of my training videos, training routine. Well, now I can't really shoot video on that yet. What I can do, what I'm going to try to do in my videos, is kind of lay out just very briefly my training routine, what I do in my lifts, which truly is very repetitive and some might find very boring, but you don't become strong, you don't become a great athlete by doing something new every week. It's a ton of repetition, but if you find joy in what you do, it's never boring, right? So that's something I also want to share what I do. So I'm just going to kind of briefly lay it out, and here it comes. Alright, so this week I've done a 15k run on Monday. Tuesday I went lifting. Did another 15k run yesterday, Wednesday, and today it's time for lifting again. Tuesday I did chest and back. Today I'm going to do arms and shoulders, which is my favorite. And then tomorrow I'm planning on doing another 10k run and potentially do a long run the weekend, or maybe I'll sneak in another weightlifting session. It should be a pretty good week, pretty high volume for my standard, what I'm able to do. So right now I'm about 15 minutes out. Got some pre-workout in here. We're gonna chug that and we'll get going. So this is my training calendar of 2022 so far. You can see I try to stay somewhat consistent, and my goal is to train about 8 hours a week. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more. But in my opinion, consistency is much more important than sticking to a rigid training program, which you may or may not be able to do. We all have busy lives, we have kids, we have jobs, and it's incredibly difficult to stick to a very regimented training program. Therefore, as a hybrid athlete, I truly believe that diversifying your workouts and doing a lot of different things builds a better athlete and gives more flexibility, gives you more fun, as long as you stay consistent. These are basically the individual activities you can see on Strava. So you can see the green is running, the purple is weightlifting, and the red is cycling, whether it's indoors or outdoors. So I try to stay somewhat consistent. One week is better than the other, but in the long term, on the grand scale, you can see the consistency. Now here you see the Strava graph, which shows my current fitness levels and the one in the past, obviously. Now last year I did not quite use Strava as much and did not upload everything, therefore there's this huge dip. Now here is somewhat the same view as you have on Strava, but this is from Polar. You can see the cardio load buildup, so your cardio fitness level. Keep in mind, this does not account for weightlifting, for mobility, stretching, yoga, restorative. This does not account for many things. This is purely the cardio fitness. So thank you for watching. I'm going to work on some more content, kind of also diversify the content and the footage. Anyway, I hope you learned more about hybrid training, what being a hybrid athlete is, and make sure, don't forget, look at yourself, look at your level, look at what you want to accomplish, as big or small as it is, and think about what you can do. Try to diversify those workouts, find activities that you truly enjoy, and start. Not tomorrow, not next week, just start. Take small steps, make small changes, and just start, and you'll see the difference quite quickly. Stay in tune with your body and make the improvements, and you'll be thankful for it, because ultimately we're doing this for the long haul, for long term, for health, for our happiness, for everything. See you next time.